CoinDesk Live. We are in Singapore where Apex 2025 is underway. This is the largest annual summit for the XRPL community. Our next guest will be on stage later talking all about XRP staking powered by Flare and TEEs. Flare co-founder and CEO Hugo Philion joins us. Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Now, you're here at Apex 2025. You are going to be talking on stage later. Talk to me a little bit, give me a preview about what you hope to convey to the audience here.
Absolutely. So we're covering, the background of Flare is that it's a layer 1 blockchain which has fundamentally baked in data protocols into the chain. So this allows effectively the chain itself to get data from prices to Web 2 data to Web 3 data. This means you can build applications on the chain that are quite unique relative to other layer 1s. We've built essentially the easiest and most robust way to bring data from external systems onto the chain. We're using that to increase the capabilities of the XRP asset and for people to be able to use that XRP asset to get yield through a restaking and staking service.
Talk to me about bringing data, off-chain data, on-chain. What are some of the pain points that you're solving? What are some of the challenges that this helps solve for folks that are building and then also
Absolutely.
the folks who are using the product?
Fundamentally, you have two major challenges. First is safety. So safety is essentially, blockchains are not data, on the whole, not data native. Flare is. And how you secure the data coming onto the chain is quite important because a bad piece of data or a bad data print can affect downstream value through applications very, very strongly. So you have to have, as safe and as decentralized a system as possible, in our view. And that's what we've built Flare for. And then the second is ease of use. If you go to an oracle and you try to get a piece of data, it can be very, very hard to acquire that data and to get a set of validators or nodes that will give you that data. On Flare, especially for Web 2 data, we've built a very generic system to be able to effectively get data from pretty much any open API that you wish to use. So safety and effectively usability for developers, and that's critical. Those are very strong pain points.
I got to ask you about AI because everyone loves to talk about AI now. I think when we talk about data, there is a real AI play here. How are you thinking about integrating AI into what you're doing, and does that help you kind of solve those problems faster and make this data a little bit more transparent?
So I think there's a large nexus between the data that we can provide and machine learning AI. It remains to be seen how people want to develop that out in crypto, in blockchain. A lot of the AI projects we've been seeing are maybe first gen and need a lot of improvement. The way we think about AI, we're a blockchain that provides data, but blockchains really suck at compute. They don't have large amounts of compute power. And so we're building an off-chain verified compute layer that complements the blockchain, gives you a large amount of guarantees over the code that is running in that layer. And that's where I think there'll be a real expression of AI together with Flare's data.
Now, let's talk a little bit about XRP staking. I know that you are going to be discussing that on stage a little bit later. Talk to us more about this partnership and what this means for folks who are holding XRP.
Oh, absolutely. So we're building with an entity in the US called Firelight. We're building a staking platform for XRP. And it's going to start with things like staking to AVSs. An AVS is actively validated service. This is a service either on-chain or on a different chain or a layer 2 that needs to acquire value in order to bootstrap its ecosystem, acquire security value. That's the fundamental premise of effectively staking in this manner. But we're also going to be providing different types of vaults. So you have a risk strata, starting with very, very, very low risk things like staking to AVSs, but there'll be other vaults with different risk levels that do more interesting financial activities with XRP. And so people will be able to pick effectively the level of risk that they want. Obviously, compliant with regulation. So, you know, from very simple low-risk things to higher risk, higher return things. And that's the sort of promise that you know, staking represents for XRP, which is, of course, a $134 billion asset and a huge use case, you know, for Flare, and a huge use case for being able to put XRP to work in other areas.
You said obviously compliant with regulation. So far at the desk, we've spoken about regulatory regimes all over the world. We've talked about MAS here in Singapore. We've talked about the US. We've talked about MiCA over in Europe. How do you ensure that that compliance is up to par with all the different regulatory frameworks in the jurisdictions that you operate in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm fundamentally an infrastructure builder, and so I don't really build applications. The things that we build are sort of not. We don't have to think necessarily about compliance because it's very core infra. For our partners that build applications that people are going to directly use, that's their sort of bread and butter. And you know, you just have to. I think you have to pick the hardest regulatory regime that you want to attack, and be compliant in that area, and then hopefully that gives you compliance across the spectrum.
All right, we are at Apex 2025 in Singapore. What are you hoping to walk away from the event with, and what are you hoping to walk away from the region with as you go back home and continue to build?
Absolutely. So, you know, I hope the XRP community and the people at Ripple will understand, you know, what we're building with Flare and Firelight. It's obviously the first major use case for our blockchain for data. We obviously intend to go way beyond, you know, just XRP staking. There's huge value in using data and compute to increase the capabilities of DeFi applications. We think we have probably a list of 30 things we would like to have built. So if you're a developer out there, come and talk to us. That utilize the very unique nature of Flare's stack, from, you know, AI to way more interesting financial primitives than currently exist. So that's sort of where we are. So I'm hoping that the audience here will understand how they're going to be able to use their XRP to get yield, and then participate downstream in the DeFi ecosystem with a liquid stake token. This then allows them to effectively retain their position in XRP, but also get some financial performance out of it, other than just the beta to the market.
You mentioned a little bit about what you're thinking about next, wanting to go beyond XRP staking. What is that next step? Can you give us a little bit of alpha?
Absolutely. So we obviously have XRP staking, we have a DeFi ecosystem, but we're building out a verifiable compute layer. I think that once you have a compute layer, you can start looking at, okay, well, how do I put things like risk models into a compute layer? Once I have a verifiable risk model that can't effectively be changed arbitrarily, because this is the guarantee that blockchain gives you, is that, you know, this is the guarantee you want to replicate from what blockchain gives you with a verifiable compute layer, which is that the code is the code and it doesn't, you know, it's fairly immutable. What you then have is you have data, you have compute, you have liquidity, and suddenly you have a very interesting substrate against which to build really quite complex cross-chain, multi-chain products, both for institutional and for retail.
Hugo, thank you so much for joining us at the desk. I look forward to seeing you around the event.
Thank you, my pleasure.
That was Flare co-founder and CEO Hugo Philion.